Esnati Mwemba gets her own 6 children and 2 orphan grandchildren ready for school. After 2 years of drought, the fields have nothing more to offer.
Kakuli inge bungata wana ko bazama yanga fera hakuna sebacha kufumana bupi esaniweza pisweke kumutu kyo muberekera zeni hasani file mashere niko na niole kabupi fere mwana ko muni na nibupi woni zoyeza pisweke bana baka kona kunochaka kusasani abu fera baka inona twalo hakuna ko bafumana sakucha.
Mrs. Mwemba's firstborn daughter died in 1993 when her sons were too young to remember. Since then, they have lived with Grandma and her own children. They all go to school together, and Grandma pays the school fund and examination fees from the pension money. But with 2 extra mouths to feed, hunger is a constant worry.
Hunger is a problem. It's a problem because that's why some teachers mostly identify why this learner is not participating in his or her lesson, because he's hungry. Because he will spend most of his time meditating, what am I going to eat? I left home coming to school without anything to eat, and even if I leave school now going back home, I will stay without eating anything. Therefore, we find that that learner, at the end of the day, you will find them leaving school at early age or early stage, looking for green pasture somewhere. They become criminals at small ages. So really, hunger is one of the disturbing factors as far as education is concerned.
In Mafuta, the grandmothers realized that families could no longer cope. They came together to form an action group with donations of food from a local businessman. For community volunteers like Mrs. Mwemba, the drought has only added to the hardship. The impact of AIDS has devastated Caprivi region. When parents, aunts and uncles die, it's grandparents who care for the children. Most are poor and need support from NGOs and government.
The needs for orphans and vulnerable children are many. There's no way that the ministry or one agency can deal with that. Therefore, a multi-sectoral approach to these problems is the way to go, is to make sure that the limited resources that we are having as a nation are pulled together and then are utilized in such a way that these children's needs are met. Their needs for basic education, needs for health, needs for having shelter, needs for having love and care will be met. It's just pulling together the resources for government, resources for NGOs, resources for community, as well as donor agencies. Pulling those resources, human as well as financial, together in order that we can solve these problems.
Mrs. Mwemba cuts reeds to make mats to sell. It doesn't make much money, but every cent helps with extra mouths to feed. There is help from government. Foster grants for families looking after orphans. $200 a month for the first child and $100 each for the others. Does Mrs. Mwemba know how to look for a grant?
Nzira ya kufumana mashere nyao nensika iziva kale. Yakuli mwende hani yakwa ni kama ofisi wakwana kunitusa mashere nyao kufari ndiala. Nensika ifumana kale kuli kinzira yeo torohire yesu anenge ifiyani mунfanira kuzamaira. Kuna se niziva isa abakani wana abakani torokera kuli nizive.
Social workers can assist grandmothers like Mrs. Mwemba to become legal foster parents, but getting a grant takes time.
What I've realized, only few people knew about the maintenance and foster care grants. Like maybe less than 20 are receiving maintenance grant. So we have decided, like early this year, it was March, to go out there in the community, especially in the outside town, just to go inform them about the services which are available from our ministries. So now a lot of people, we went from village to village in order to get, the number of people, of orphans who are there, and then to inform about the maintenance and the foster care grants.
Looking for assistance is something new in Caprivi. Traditionally, the extended family cares for children in need. But as the number of orphans in a family grows, the foster grant becomes more important.
The economic pressure and inflation at the end of the day is so much that people cannot take it anymore. So what you anticipate is your family structures breaking down, and because of that financial pressure, people have to go and get some source somewhere somehow, and so the figures are actually getting up more. I was amazed when I looked at the monthly report last month from Caprivi, how the applications for maintenance grant, because normally you don't get it, were increasing. If you look at it from a point of view where you hardly got 5 in a given month, and now you are receiving 50.
To tell you the fact, maybe almost 400 claims have already been forwarded to our office from May. Almost about 400 claims have already been forwarded to our office, and then we are now just waiting from the national level to decide on that. It was supposed to take maybe 6 months, so maybe it's almost, we are in the 6th month now. So I don't know if from now, or maybe they're going to start receiving end of this year, because maybe there are a lot of claims which were sent in short periods. So I don't know, maybe it's too much work for them down there, up there, but I don't know, we're just waiting.
The unfortunate situation is that we are experiencing a backlog now of almost a year and a couple of months, say 2 months. But this process is because of the fact that we don't have sufficient money, and we don't receive. Although one would budget for the grants for a given year, the reality is that there's not sufficient money to be allocated. So since everybody is getting from the same basket, the spreading process has to be done in order to justify in all areas and all needs experienced within the country. But we are doing it on a very slow process, but we are getting there.
The Chobe River is a nice place for children to splash and cool off in the east of Caprivi. Masakili is several hours' walk from the main road and 70 kilometers from the regional town of Katima Mulilo. Information from government trickles through slowly. Oscar Sharmu is a volunteer worker with Catholic AIDS Action, the only organization giving care and support in the village. This morning, he's come to visit Asnat Simwanza. Mrs. Simwanza had 14 children. All but 3 have died, most of them recently. She cares alone for 17 grandchildren. They have nowhere else to go. The family used to rely on their own crops, but there are no adults to work the fields. The children are too young. Grandma feeds them, clothes them, and somehow sees to it that most of them go to school. She hasn't heard about foster parent grants. All the children here depend upon one grandmother's pension of $250.
Kana kuli sinambule zikuli fokumwe mfumananga kashere nyinga supale. Kana nami vuza kuli ka mikwana ka pamukwana kukwanisa za banana ba sinahaba bona hala kungatachwa na mkwana ba kwanisa za lituso za bona kapachwa.
Kaka bakwanisa kana ka busupale. kabusu pale nji 250. Okutarusa kuti kana kasaka kana kadansi hana 100 kubola 3 mwakana tipeto kapene tikamana Eto manyando fera neni nyanda sena hatuli mapeka kukondoloke banzo bubale
kana ki ngasana nami vuza puzo hape eli vanana abayenzi bakubona kuli bakena skolo mu ipirisanga kapa kuitusa chwang kwa kubalifera kwa skolo kuli basike bazo kwa skolo bakene skolo
benjira chikolo bahwire peto manyando bamwe manene kumana kuli haka nene kumana kubaliha hanu wana kapene kan lukabuti tundu izi hanu bona waola nikali hawani hape hani bolera hape niluke hape nikauza nikali hawani mane cholo bamwe kabali hita habekere fera kanene kumana kubaliha tingi hape tini kwete niluka musebezu kutumendeka nuwane
Tindiala za zisiezi utata buzuruteni kuzona kiri kolo fani ndiala nasakalire kukena skolo kubata halalika zengata za mupiro wa skolo ziba batakwani kwa skolo kubata hala mashere nyiri kama nyima uniform tuna kuliri kaza nseruzi fumana kwa vutata fali kale banana ne bakenanga na asiala ndiala wako na kufeza skolo hakuna kulifa kwa skolo hakuna kuli mwenda tinestino sesi ndi wakuna kuza mafera mubiri fande chwa nenga sina sapalo va mubiri kono kwa skolo kwani haba muleleki.
Education is the first concern for guardians once the children have been fed. The schools are under pressure too. There's not enough money for books and pencils. School fund payments are one way of keeping up standards, but unless a poor parent or guardian summons up courage to come forward, schools insist on payment.
If the guardian is not informing us, automatically we will force that particular learner to pay school fund because we don't know the background of that particular learner. Therefore, that's why we always advise the parents that if they have got any problem concerning that particular learner or those particular offense, they have to feel free to approach us. Then we'll make means and ways to assist that particular learner.
Kwa skolo kwani nebuire kwateni lokupera bana baskolo babona kudi baba mbaba na baskolo kidi ndiara hakuna kubasona kufumana mashire nyakuli baleke ma uniform karabu yezo kwa skolo kwani baluvulera kuli mina bashembo muina nibona mina mucyanyi mina mutinanyi wiye kumutu yeze piswe kufumana mashirenyi ulifere mwana hao kwa skolo yo utafala pala hao kona karabu balofa kwa skolo kwani.
Under pressure, schools are exempting orphans and other vulnerable children. But they need proof from a social worker or traditional leader that the child comes from a poor home.
What we need from that particular guardian is to approach the traditional quota or traditional authority, because they are the people who knows the community within. Then once the tribal authority has been approached, they will be given a written letter which will come to the school here. Once we receive that type of document, the school together with the school board, the school management with the school board, they will sit down and write a letter to the ministry explaining why this particular learner is failing to pay school fund. Then automatically the ministry will exempt that learner from paying school fund.
Approaching the traditional authority or social worker for a letter can be a complicated task for a grandmother, which might put her off. But the Ministry of Education's policy is simple. Orphans and other poor children may not be refused access to education if they cannot pay school funds or other fees.
We have written circulars to the schools, and we actually also think of reminding schools every year through these circulars. It is making it clear. We also have got the customer charter for primary and secondary schools, which actually also tell or indicate to schools that primary education is free. The minister has issued a press statement making it clear that it is not allowed. And in that press statement, he actually even indicated that the parents should actually report such principals who are actually not adhering to the fact that they shouldn't actually bar children away from schools on the basis of non-payment of school of contribution towards school development fund.
Poverty and hunger keep children out of school. Traditional inheritance practices are pushing people affected by AIDS deeper into poverty. Bernadette's husband has died, and she is ill herself. The extended family isn't there anymore. Children are vulnerable and may soon be orphaned themselves. They need care and guidance. The community has to find ways to help families, and government has to provide support services to community volunteers and training in basic counselling skills. In Mafuta, the feeding scheme is a good place to start. When Bernadette's husband died, his relatives took nearly everything. The care group offers some simple advice.
Mwasikuwa ibizwako likiwiru chole mwasintulubiza tato inge moni nezinafa hanishwa ilukela kuziba kuli yalukela kubabalela bana baka kimanyi tabayo mwaiziba
naiziba bavana baka kuna kubasepisa mwenti onachwala kwa kumina batu bamulimu basuru kuno nitosa mwenti kimina mukona kunengera bona haiva kuli mina ngo munivona kwinani sare makona kunishimbera bona kono hairi kwalusika lwaka kunna kona kubasepisa
mina hamwina fafasi mulukela kuziba kuli bana bamina mubaeza chwani mwaketa mwamuna ni kungola bwitato bwa mina mwangola kuli na hamu nibona fani kashwa nentabela kuli sakuli kulisibesa mwanake sakuli kulisibesa mwanake yakanga bana baka kimukete piringe musika eza kaleka kuli nako ebusholikele bwata batuse bauzweza batu ni hebana kuli mushwe nakona kutogula kuli neli munyana kapeto nangali byana kusiya banana baba bafita fa baba enyani.
Writing a will isn't easy, but it's the best way to make sure children inherit what is due to them. Bernadette could be assisted to write one if there were trained paralegals in her community. If there's a will, justice can be done.
We see there's a lot of grabbing. And when it's done, the children or the affected, people, they come to our offices. And then what we do, whether there was property grabbing, whether there was money that was grabbed from the children, whether the house were grabbed from those children, the court gives the order for those things to go back to the beneficiaries, for the houses to be sold in order that the children they must inherit the property of the deceased parent. So, in other words, we are showing the people that the law is there to protect these people.
To protect women, children, and orphans, new laws are being enacted and others amended. If they are enforced, they will make a difference, according to the Master of the High Court in Windhoek.
I think the one that will bring actually the biggest chance for orphans is the administration of estates bill, when that is changed. We have at this moment actually quite a lot of problems where orphans doesn't really get their inheritances. The executors walk away with the money and they do not give anything to the child. So when that is changed, we will have quite a better position for orphans.
Even when laws, foster grants and school fund exemptions are in place, it will be community volunteers who step in when families can no longer cope. At Mafuta, the grandmothers are meeting the first need, hunger. Government must now pull all the partners together. Health, education, industry and agriculture need to find practical ways to support community development in the region. The task is urgent. Over 40% of pregnant women in the area are HIV positive.
The main cause, especially for the orphans at the moment, is HIV/AIDS. Therefore, HIV/AIDS also should not be left in isolation when we are dealing with problems of orphans, because that is the major cause. It's also targeting or making sure that we have to carry out extensive campaigns on educating, on trying to change the behaviors of people, so that if we change our behaviors, if we can contain the spread of HIV/AIDS, we're sure that we can contain also the problems of orphans and other vulnerable children, not making them to escalate. Because if we leave HIV/AIDS as it is now, then we are bound to have this problem getting out of proportion. But that's not for us as a nation to despair and give up. We have to fight and fight until we really conquer the problem.